And now to security matters. Nigerian military authorities have taken a swipe at the governor of Zamfara State over comment that political interference was inhibiting troops from ending insecurity, especially in the state. Director of Defense Media Operations, Major General Edward Buba, says the state government has failed to provide an enabling platform for security forces to coordinate operations against the banditry. Sifo Nesian reports. I'll bring you more updates of that report as soon as we can. But for further in this conversation, former Captain U.S. Army Bish Johnson joins me on the news via Zoom from Abuja. Good to have you join us.
Good morning, and thank you for having me.
So let's begin with what is your reading of the security crisis in that state and the governor's response, saying that this crisis cannot be resolved except there is political will. We know that this is not the first time a sitting governor has mentioned this.
Yes, it's all about blame shifting. The insecurity situation in Zamfara is not new. That state has been one of the most troubled states in this country, and we've had a long-running history of insecurity in Zamfara State. The truth of the matter is that both the governor and the military are both correct. I know people will say, how can two people be correct? But it's possible for two people to be correct. Now, I don't know about political interference now, but I know that historically, lack of political will in terms of securing our borders, particularly in those northern sectors, had always led to this influx of all these small arms and light weapons that have been the weapons of choice for most of these criminals and bandits that operate in that part of the country. And so it requires political will for us to be able to secure our borders in the northern sector. Now, having said that also, the military is also correct that you cannot substitute governance with kinetic measures to suppress insecurity. All levels of government must provide governance, including the states and the local government areas. I don't know how effective local government areas are in Zamfara State, but I am assuming that local government in Zamfara State may not be any different from local government in Imo State or in which the governments have the governors have pretty much hijacked that tier of government, thereby contributing in perpetuating lack of governance that leads to insecurity in most parts of the country. That is one. Another thing is that Zamfara State is one of the most rural states in Nigeria. So there are some aspects of some parts of the states that are very remote. And when you have those kind of remote places where you don't have access to the internet, there's no network for communication, and the troops cannot even access some parts of the states, it makes it very difficult for them to be able to confront the criminals, even when you know where they can be found. So that's why I say that both the governor, to some extent, about lack of political will, but I don't think that lack of political will is with this particular administration, because this government has been trying to do whatever it can to be able to reduce insecurity in the country. But I know there has been lack of political will in Nigeria as a nation, for a very long period of time to build infrastructure, because security does not exist in vacuum. They require all these infrastructures to be able to carry out their jobs. If there are no roads, if there's no network, the military cannot manufacture all those infrastructures. So that's why I say that both parties are correct.
And as regards the military's response to this, they're saying that the state lacks the infrastructure to be able to tackle security in that region. And also the governor is saying that these security operatives are not available when they're needed. The fact that state governors do not have, or they have limited powers over the military. Does this come into play here, and the problem of, limited resources and resource control?
Of course, that has, to a great extent, been a contributing factor in our inability to deal with insecurity in the country. Now, make no mistake, there is no country in the world where you have absolute security. That is 100% security. But every country must, strive to have at least relative security, which is one that is sufficient for people to be able to go about their normal socio-economic and political activities without fear of being kidnapped or taken ransom or killed. So yes, to that extent, there are some infrastructures that are required by states. And this infrastructural neglect in Nigeria has contributed in limiting the ability of security agencies, coupled with the dwindling resources, as you mentioned, contributed in security agencies being able to confront some of these insecurity problems that we have in the country. And I mentioned the issue of border management, which is supposed to be able to limit the amount of small arms and light weapons that are flowing into the country from that northern sector, through the Sahel and from Libya and all the rest of them. So all of these things combined together, the factors that are militating against the ability of Nigerian state to be able to deal decisively with the various insecurities that we have in the country.
All right. Ms. Johnson, former captain, U.S. Army, thank you for joining us on TVC Media News. Moving on.